we're at the site of our new orchard that we have been establishing. It's not done yet, but we started in spring of 2018 with selection of 48 different cultivars of apples, primarily for the cider making. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the clonal propagation. So this is how these varieties have been propagated, and right now it's the best timing to do it. So we will particularly pay attention to one of the techniques, grafting techniques, which is known as budding. So within budding you have tea budding and chip budding. With tea budding, you basically make a slice on your bud recipient, either rootstock or another grown tree already that you would like to add some different cultivar to. So you can, for example, on this tree, you can add 5, 6 different cultivars and have everything on one tree. If anything, it's going to be a really good conversation piece. The chip budding is very similar, except that in taking just a little bud and making that tea for the incision of a bud, you actually take a little chip on the rootstock or on the tree here, and then you take equal chip from the budwood or the donor of the bud, and you insert it there, and then you tie it really well. And in about 5 weeks from now, that bud will heal, and it will kind of stay dormant per se. But it would not break, it would not develop any further. So it would just callus, it would heal, and it would stay there till next spring. And then next spring it would start opening up and performing normally, basically started to grow new shoots. So this is how we do that. I would like to show you how to go about collecting the budwood. And why do we call it budwood? You know, we use 2 different terms for the same thing. The signwood would be if you're harvesting your 1-year-old shoots. So these are the 1-year-old shoots at the very end of the shoot. And we collect them in winter time or very early spring. And then we preserve them, you know, for grafting later on. With budding, we take the shoots from the current season's growth. And you can see here, this is the 1-year-old shoot here. And still has the leaves. And so if I take that, and I will take this one here, and I will show you. This is last year's growth here, and you can tell that by this little scar. This is the scar where the terminal bud was last year and this spring. And then once that opened up, it started growing this new shoot. So this is the 1-year-old shoot from the top till you hit this scar down at the bottom. So this is what we're interested about. But for all practical purposes, you know, you can leave this just to have something to hold on to. So you can make a cut and keep that either in a bottle with water, or you wrap it up in a moist paper towel. Before we go and do the actual budding, we'll have to prepare this signwood. So I'm going to inspect all these buds and to see which ones are the best. These at the very top are not good, so I'll cut that off. And then all of these other ones are usable buds. So I will just take the leaf blades and leave the petioles to create like little handles. And you'll see why I did that, because it's much easier to handle that bud with that little handle on than just plain bud without anything on it. And here I have one, so I'll show you that too. Another important thing is to have a really sharp tools. Without that, you can't go far, or you can do some serious damage to yourself. So, here we go. There is a trusty knife, and you'll see this one is equipped with 2 blades. This blade here is primarily used for grafting very early in the season, and this one is particularly designed to be used for budding. And you see this end here is to peel off the bark and make that flap where you're going to insert the bud, if you're talking about the tea budding, or where you're going to pull back that little sleeve that you create to hold the chip, if you're doing the chip budding. So let's do the chip first. So what you do, you go and you make like a break. You make a little cut right below the bud. Okay, it doesn't have to go all the way through, only till you hear the click. As you go through the bark and through the cambium, you just see that click. Then you go above the bud, about 1/2 inch, and then you just kind of peel it with a little bit of bud behind, a wood behind. And so this is what you have. This is your chip. You see there's some wood here below the bud. And normally, in order to prevent it from drying out till I prepare the other chip where I'm going to insert that, I put this in my mouth to keep it moist. You don't have to do that. If you have like a little container, just kind of spray a little water, you can just dump it in. Again, it has to be very young wood. So about 2 to 3 years old. And here I'm going into the 3-year-old wood. And where I'm going to position the bud is important as well. If I put it here, like this, what's going to happen once that bud breaks and starts growing is going to go straight up. If I put it here on this side, once that bud breaks up, it's going to go here. So I don't want my shoots to go straight up. I want them to go towards the alleyway, so on the outside. So I'm going to put it either down here or here on the side, whichever side I want that bud to grow, this is where I'm going to put it. So I will put it on this side. So again, when you do that, now you start from the top. In one of these internodes, you'll make a cut here, again till you just go through the bark, and then you'll see about how big that has to be, okay? Then I'm going to go like from here and take that chip out. I will make a little slit so that I can put this bud in. See, that comes in handy. If you have a little bit more, a longer side here, that's not a problem. You can always cut it to fit right in. You see, it's really nice. And now comes the little bit more difficult part, and this is to tie it. And I like to use the plastic bands, and I got them from a nursery. And so as you can see, these are pre-cut bands. I keep this really nice and tight. You do not want this to dry out on you. If it dries out, it's not going to heal wherever there is that pocket. So by cutting the chip from this branch, I exposed it. There is still living tissue, functioning tissue, so it's wet. And that bud is wet too. So I start tying it right now by placing the tape behind while holding this bud in place. And then I'm going to go with really tight underneath the bud. And I put my finger here to hold the pressure. Then you go gently over at the top, making sure you do not choke the bud or you damage it. So I tied this real tightly. Then I hold the pressure here and then go over the bud very gently. Okay. Holding the pressure all again. Then again hold that in place by positioning my finger underneath to hold that pressure. And then go under real tight and make a loop and basically just, tie it. Here we go. The reason I went over this bud with this tape is to create a greenhouse effect. So it's going to keep it nice and moist, and it will speed up the healing process. In about 5 to 6 weeks, usually about 5, we'll come back. By that time the bud would heal, and I would come on this side, on the underside of the bud, and I would make the cut and release that tape. Then you're going to have this bud really sitting here nicely waiting to start growing next season. So for you to remember, if you have more than just one tree, and which side did you actually do that grafting, it helps if you take one of these flagging tapes and just kind of put it right there so you can see it. So you know where that is and you know where to look for it. So this would be all about the chip bud. Again, the difference between the chip and the bud that I'm going to be using for the tea is just in the amount of wood that I take. So here I'm going to take very little wood, so my cut is going to be a bit more shallow. Instead of digging into it and taking a chip, I'll just go very superficial, trying to get just the, primarily, there is not too much wood. It's much less wood than what I had before. And I'll use it here on the same, except that I'm going to go here to show you that tea. So again, you start with cutting through the bark, and then you just make one of the vertical cuts like this, and you just kind of flip it a little bit like that, just enough to insert this handy little tool to lift the bark without damaging the cambium. That's going to be important, to have the intact cambium underneath. So I'm going to pull this very gently. You can make a little bit larger or just big enough, and that's what I did. Just big enough. If you look at it here, you see the cambium exposed. So this is that really nice smooth tissue under the bark. Now you will slide this in between these flops as far down as possible. If you have a little bit left over here or too much on the top, just cut it. pull these flops. This is nice because it holds this bud in place. It's not going to slide on you. Now, again, you're using one of these tapes, pretty much the same procedure as I explained before. Nice and tight, again, without damaging the bud. Pull it through tight, and here we go. There it is. As I said, the only way to get exactly what you want is by clonal propagation, which budding is one of those. If you need any more instructions or information on it, you can get it on our WVU extension site. But the success of any type of grafting is like everything else. You have to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, and you're getting more proficient and much better by doing it. So just go at it and enjoy it.